This morning, I'm not preaching on the gospel because I feel like it feels like the same one we heard last week, but instead on Jeremiah and 1 Corinthians. So, what is love? Bonnie read us a laundry list of what love is, but what is love? Yesterday, one of my friends, we have a group text message where people can send pictures of their family, their kids, whatnot. So they sent a picture of Benny, and he belongs to Victor and Laura. And he was sitting on Laura's lap, and Victor was recording. And she said, "Benny, I love you." And he said, "Why?" And he's only about 1.5, so he said, "Why?" And she was trying to explain, because when you feel like somebody's really special to you, you tell them you love them, and giving him a very age-appropriate explanation. So she said, "Benny, I love you." And he said, "Why?" And she said, "Benny, do you love me?" And he was like, "Why?" And then she tried to explain again. And still, over and over again, he kept saying, "Why?" This weekend, well, a few days ago, I went to Target, and I noticed that alongside of, and I was very excited about this, the gardening and outdoor things, which makes me think that summer is coming eventually. They also still had, their big Valentine's display. So I wondered if love is these things. I quite like these, so maybe, but is love buying the biggest there were hearts that were like this, and also teddy bears that were gigantic. Is love this? Is love Valentine's Day? Is love making sure that you have someone on said day just so you don't feel alone? What is love? This morning, I am happy to hear from the prophet Jeremiah. Throughout Jeremiah's career, the prophet spends most of his time focusing on steering God's people away from idol worship. Now, for us, idol worship seems like a thing of the past. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen Hey Arnold. But I like that show. Well, I did like that show when I was a child. And Helga, she's very mean, but she has this super crush on Arnold, and she's very mean to him all the time. But in her closet, she has made a statue of Arnold and collected things that belong to him, and she goes into the closet and sort of worships him. That's kind of what I think about when I hear about idol worship. We imagine pulling out small figurines and worshiping them. The idols, for us, are probably not those things, but instead the things that draw our attention away from what's important. Work, of course, can be an idol. Fear can be an idol. Gambling or other vices, certain types of relationships, the way that we think relationships ought to be, in part created by this Valentine's culture. Facebook can be an idol, other social media. I would invite you to wonder what idols are present in your life. Jeremiah reminds us that God's love is not like that. The prophet tells us that the womb, I knew you in the womb, which was understood as the center of God's love in Jeremiah, is where God's presence is. This observation shuffles us along to the second reading, where we encounter Paul's letter to the Corinthians. And this is a text often read at weddings, and if you're married, maybe you even heard it at your own wedding. I'm particularly struck by verse 12, where Paul writes, "For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." This reflects what Jeremiah says. I knew you while you were still in the womb. God says, I know all these things about you, and that's when I called you. The whole passage from 1 Corinthians speaks of love and what love is, the attributes of love, but maybe we need to take a step back to think about what love actually is. What does it actually mean? And as I was in my pericope group where I study the text each week with colleagues, we tried to brainstorm what love actually is. And we came up with this: deep connectedness, difficult, to be known and seen fully, which reflects that of the 1 Corinthians text. Intentional community like this one. A continual process, not once and done like in romantic comedies. Authenticity and accountability. Can we really do those things? Can we really feel deep connectedness with others? Can we really go through the difficult parts? Can we really know someone and see them fully and still love them? Can we really thrive in intentional community? Can we really pursue this continual process? Can we really seek authenticity and accountability? On our own, I would say no. We go to what's superficial, but with God, we can. That's what the prophet Jeremiah tells us this morning. That's what St. Paul is getting at. And most times, God's love for us comes through other people. So it's important that we can love each other, that we can figure out how to be a community together, even through the difficult times. Love is engaging in relationship. And if any of you are in a relationship, it doesn't just mean a romantic relationship, although that's often the go-to for these texts. Any relationship can be hard. We know that our friends do things that annoy us. We know that our partners do things that annoy us. Sometimes it's hard. They make bad decisions. It's just how it is. And through those difficult times, we still know them and see them and love them. So maybe we have to think about love differently than this, and maybe even differently than jewelry and fancy dinners and wine and special times. And maybe we have to be more like Benny and say, why? Why do you love me? And why do I love you? And those things, those deep connectedness things that we have to one another, those are the things that can keep us going. When our relationships are hard, we can remember, why do I love you? Why do you love me? This connectedness doesn't come from something we've created here. It comes from God. God continues to create these relationships, continues to bolster them up, continues to give us the drive that we need to go out into the world and gather more and more people to love. Amen.